Minor amendments have been made since the original proposal. These amendments concern the scope of the aims and objectives for the research conducted. The research will now be focused entirely on the correlation between tempo and consumer behavior. Millimans Study in 1982 raised the question of whether or not there was a correlation between music tempo and consumer behavior. The results concluded the lower the tempo of the background music, the more minutes shoppers would spend inside the store. This research is now over 30 years old. It is very possible that the various changes to consumer behavior in this time period would affect the experiment if it was reconducted today. Millimans Study was originally conducted in a supermarket, and so this study will research whether or not the same effects on consumer behavior will be discovered if the test is reproduced in a different retail situation in our more modern environment. In 1986, Bland and Altman studied repeatability, making clear the importance of being able to test and retest any experiment in order to show its reliability. This is the reasoning behind performing a retest of Millimans Study. In order to retrieve the song data which was playing in store during the research period, an app called Shazam was used to log the songs playing on the radio. These 15 songs were the songs that played over the 1 hour period where the research was conducted. Now that these 15 songs have been identified, they can be brought back and analysed to find their BPMs. This was done using the tap function on a guitarist's high-level effects board. This graph compares the time spent in store, in minutes, against the average tempo of music in the store, in beats per minute. Each point on the graph represents one customer. It is clear from this graph that there is a correlation between time spent in store and the average tempo for the customer's shopping experience. There are anomalies, however, on this graph. There were 2 customers who spent less than 2 minutes inside the store, however were exposed to the slowest beats per minute. The use of the mixed methods approach became very important when trying to understand the motives behind the consumer's shopping, particularly whilst identifying anomalies in the research. Alongside the observational study, 3 interview questions were asked to the customers leaving the store. The questions were structured in such a way that the follow-up 2 questions would not be necessary if the customer replied no to the first question. The 3 questions that were asked were: did you come here specifically, or were you browsing? Did you get what you came for? Did you buy anything you were not intending to buy? Midway through the research, there was one woman who entered the store whilst the song at 70 beats per minute was playing. According to Millimans' theory, this should have resulted in her staying in the store a long time. However, she only stayed 1 minute. Thanks to our use of the mixed methods, we were able to identify that the reason she only stayed for 1 minute was because she was looking for a specific item, and when that was not available, she immediately left. Another anomaly was a woman who came into the store when the music was playing at 120 beats per minute. She remained in the store for 8 minutes. After her shop, she justified this to us by saying she had gone to do her Christmas shopping, and for this reason it can be assumed that she had probably spent the same amount of time in store regardless, as she was there for browsing purposes and she had not come for anything specific. Added here is the line of best fit on the graph. This line of best fit matches well with Millimans' own findings. The lower the amount of beat per minute, the greater the amount of time spent in store. The higher the beats per minute, the lower the amount of time spent in store. There were exceptions to these findings, which have been identified by the red and green circle. In order to find out more about why these anomalies existed, the interview questions would serve of great use. In conclusion, we can establish that the relationship between tempo and consumer behavior still exists. Millimans studies are applicable despite them having originally only been conducted in supermarkets. They apply in general to the whole retail environment. However, we must also note that whilst this is the case, there will be exceptions to the scenario. For example, buyers who have a very specific purpose and will not be distracted by anything. Another consideration for future research would be to avoid periods such as seasonal holidays to conduct their research, as buyer behavior can vary within these periods. Future research on this topic could be done using a larger sample size than was used for this project. The sample size for this project was determined by time constraints and resource constraints. Ideally, to get a true representation of the public, a much larger sample size must be used. Despite these constraints, however, the findings still reflected those of Millimans in 1982. The research for this project was conducted very close to the Christmas period. Several customers during the interviews commented that they were there buying gifts for their families. As this study is aiming to get a better idea of consumer behavior in general, to focus the research during a seasonal time, like Christmas, is not ideal.